This video we start talking about Chapter 11. So in Chapter 11 we are to the point where you've done most of your audit stuff. You've audited the cycle accounts, you've done control tests, substantive tests, and now we're going to take care of those last few little items before we release our audit report. Alright, so this is the audit timeline. So you're auditing financial statements for a certain period, right? So we're just going to say January 1 through December 31, but obviously it could be any period, right? It could be you could be auditing for a fiscal year that ends June 30 or so, but we'll just use January 1 through December 31 because that's pretty typical. So you've got your financial report statement dates, right? And so here's your period under audit, right? Beginning of a year to end of year. And that's what you're auditing. So you say, on this date, December 31, these financial statements are fairly presented, right? So there's some numbers as of that particular date, or for the year ending that particular date, depending on what financial statement it is. So between the beginning of the year and the end of the year, you're at your client, you're doing what's called interim testing, all right? So that's any of the tests we've talked about that are happening before the end of the financial statement date, all right? So say your client does cycle inventory, and on June 30 you went and observed the inventory, right? That would be an interim test. All right, so anything you've done before the end of the year, that's interim testing. So you've done some control tests, you've done some standard procedures. Those are all that's just called interim testing. All right, then the end of the year comes around and you've got some stuff. Now it's like, now we know what numbers they're saying are the end of the year numbers. All right, so we have to complete our procedures, right? We have to do some roll forward work to make sure that, okay, the interim stuff we did, we still have the right numbers. You have some attorney letters, some written representation, going concern assessment, adjusting journal entries, right? All stuff that you can't really do till the end of the year. Audit documentation review, which obviously you can't do till you're done with your audit. And this thing called subsequent events, which we'll talk about when we get to that. So some things kind of have to wait till the end of the year, right? Because you have to really see, okay, what happened during the whole year under audit, and now we can look at that. Then there's another date called the date of the auditor's report. So sometime, here's the financial statement dates, right? You do your extra stuff you have to do to finish up your audit. It takes you, let's say, a couple months. And you stop doing it's like, we're done. We're not looking for anything else. We're not getting any more. We're done with this audit. That's our financial statement. That's our audit report date, right? And so then you get it to, this is it. We're not auditing anymore. We're going to spend the next day writing up our opinion, do it, and release it, right? So it typically gets released with the financial statements, of course. So here's the audit report release date. Now, once that audit is out there in the world, stuff can still happen, right? You can have a subsequently discovered fact, omitted audit procedures, management letter, and communications with those charged with governance. So the videos for this chapter, we're going to talk about these sort of finishing up details, and they're happening because of this timeline, right? Some stuff you do before the financial statements date. Some stuff you have to wait till the last day, right? You have to wait until you have the actual numbers. And then even after you finish your report, some stuff could still happen. So we need to know what to do with that. All right, so here's all these items we're going to deal with in this chapter. I just talked about them. Okay, roll forward procedures. So we talked about doing interim work. So from January 1 on, you can be doing work. You can test controls. You can observe inventory. If it's a cycle inventory, observe that at different times of the year. You're just there doing stuff. You can't do everything on the last day of the year. So you're doing stuff. Well, you still have to make sure that the stuff you tested in the interim still holds true at the end. Like if you tested those controls, they're still working. If you observed an inventory, well, that was great on June 30th. Now, what is the inventory today? Right? So do a little samples or something. So you will do what's called roll forward procedures, and it's just to get more evidence. So you've got your main evidence on the interim work, and now I'm just going to roll that forward, we call it, and just make sure we get final evidence that we know that on the December 31st date, that yes, that's the number. You'll do analytical procedures. So you'll stop. Now you've got your complete full financials. You did some analytical procedures to plan the audit, right? Like, oh, this year, what's changed? What's going on? Maybe you did some analytical procedures during the audit, right? You took some non-financial performance measures and compared them to, say, revenue numbers. Did that make sense, right? And you'll do them again at the end of the audit, and you're just making sure that nothing unexpected has happened, right? So that now that you've got the actual final numbers for December 31st, does that gross margin make sense? That inventory turnover, wow, we did the inventory and we checked it, but look at how inventory turnover. That's really slow moving. I wonder if there's something obsolete, right? So you do these final analytical procedures with your final numbers. And you finally review any weird accounts. Like there might be a few miscellaneous accounts, clearing accounts, legal expense accounts, things that are like, what is that really for? Consulting. Oh my goodness, consulting fees in another country or something, right? So look at these oddball accounts. Do some analytical procedures on them, see if they fit in with typical expenses for miscellaneous. Should be not very much. Review anything that's an estimate, right? So now at the end of the year, you've got your final numbers. You should always be reviewing estimates. Somebody review how management does it. Make sure that it's reasonable. That's what you don't do the estimates. Management does. Is what management doing reasonable? Then finally, now you're to the end of the year, and you're preparing everything. One thing you need to do is understand what could be some contingent liabilities, right? So things they may owe depending on depending on how legal cases turn out, right? So any of your clients at any given time is going to probably have several lawsuits underway. Imagine a client like Walmart has several people suing them every day. So you have to talk to your clients and figure out what people might be suing them, right? Because if somebody's suing them, then they might have to pay that out, and that would be a contingent liability. All right? So it might need to be on the financial statements, either in the notes, right? It's like, well, this lawsuit's going on, we may lose. If we did, we'd owe this much. Or it may be like, they definitely are going to owe it. Maybe it needs to be an actual liability. So you have to figure this out. Are there any of these going on? So you have to talk to your clients. Who's suing you right now? They may not want to tell you that, right? It's like if they're trying to hide that contingent liability, oh no, we don't have anything going on. You have to look at directors' meetings, because like big lawsuits will be discussed. You can even look in, records where court records and things where suits have been filed. You need to review anything that shows that somebody might be making a claim against them, whether it's a lawsuit or governmental agency, something like that. When you have an idea about what you think, you might even look at lawyer bills, right? So they might have attorney bills if they're being sued. You might do that. Then you're going to do what's called an attorney letter. All right? So when you find who's suing them, how much they're suing them for, and who the attorney is, you're going to write to that lawyer, that law firm, and ask them how likely they think it is that this suit will, that they'll win or lose the lawsuit, and if they do lose it, how much would they have to pay? You're trying to find out about contingent liabilities because they can be quite large. So the idea is, remember, your client is also the attorney's client, and that attorney and the client have attorney-client privilege. The attorney isn't going to tell you anything without the client's permission. So you prepare this letter for your clients to sign. Basically, you, the auditor, prepare a letter that says, it's from the client to the lawyer. Say, I want you to tell my auditors about this lawsuit. So the client, you get the client to prepare a letter, you send it to the attorney, and the attorney sends it back to you, right? Because it's like a confirmation, right? It's going to this third party. So you want to make sure that your client, your mutual client with the attorney, that they aren't getting involved in changing that letter, right? So although it's a letter from them, because the attorney's not going to tell you anything, you want to make sure you get it back. And it's just a letter, right? It says, here's a connection with the case. What do you think is going to happen to it? How much do you think they would lose? It's just trying to find out. Here's this lawsuit. How likely are they to lose? And if they lose, how much will it be? So that way you're getting a handle on, should this be disclosed in the notes? If the lawyer writes back and says, oh, the client's sure to win, they won't owe anything. Great, nothing has to happen. It's not a contingent liability. If it's likely they're going to lose, then it might be a contingent liability. That's what you figure out. All right, so whose duty is it in this? All right, so you as the auditor, you have to try and find out about these litigation. And you're going to perform procedures like look through lawyer bills, look through letters, look through board of directors minutes, try to find what legal issues are going on. And your duty is to get the client to write to the attorney. And you personally mail that letter if the client doesn't do that. The client's duty is to tell you the truth about litigation, to provide you a list of everybody, right? It's like they're being audited. They should provide this to you. And they should prepare the letter. If there's something going on, if they're not responsive, then that's an issue. You might not want to do that audit. And the attorney represents the client. So if the client says, tell the auditors this, they should tell the auditors. Okay, next video, we're going to talk about some more end of audit procedures.